Hello and welcome back to Salute Your Sports. Kamenechev, Tom Castleman here, ready for a massive show today. It is the playoffs going down, NFC, AFC. We're in the divisional round. Got some awesome matchups coming up. Chiefs, Texans, the big one, of course, the Bills and Ravens, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. Who's the real MVP when it really matters when it comes to the playoffs? We do have ourselves the Eagles and Rams on the NFC side. A big-time win for the Rams over the Vikings. Probably the one small surprise maybe this weekend. I mean, I had Washington beating the Bucs. I wasn't surprised personally.
Mhm.
We do have Washington and Detroit, which should be a high-scoring game. Over under 55 and a half, Tom.
Mhm.
We'll have all our picks. I know we're going chalk for NFC and AFC most games, but there is no chalk in the Bills-Ravens game. I believe it's a 1-point spread. It's a virtual toss-up. I cannot wait to talk about that game. Plus, it's a Wednesday afternoon, January 15th. Actually, Wednesday night, January 15th now. We have the College Football National Championship next Monday. Notre Dame, Ohio State, two blue bloods. Quite frankly, two teams in recent seasons, Tom, they've kind of choked when it comes to the massive bowl games, the playoffs, etc. And also under the old 14 playoff, neither would have even made the field. So it's
Mhm.
a little takeaway from the 12-team playoff. Should be an awesome national championship game. We got our betting locks of the week. We got sports trivia. We got statements of the week. We have a lot of fun today. I can't wait to get started, Tom. How are you doing tonight?
I am doing fantastic. Enjoyed a fantastic weekend of wild card football, although not as compelling as I was hoping it to be. As you mentioned, Common, a lot of these games were more or less blowouts in the
Mm-hmm.
wild card round, and that's why I think a lot of folks they like the variety, they like the quantity of games on wild card weekend. But now we're starting to pare things down. Now we're getting into more and more quality. Although if you look at the betting lines, not a whole lot of public perception of parity. As we have three heavy favorites and one toss up, as you mentioned, but let's start with the one that is the toss up, the Bills and the Ravens. This is a compelling matchup for so many different reasons. I mean, Ravens topped the Bills in the regular season, so a little bit of a revenge factor there, a rematch factor. And both teams champing at the bit to have their shot at Kansas City, who we are going to presume moves on to the championship
Safe
round
assumption.
as the Bills have had a year over year postseason rivalry, regular season rivalry with Kansas City. The Ravens, of course, in the playoffs against Kansas City last season, squandered an opportunity for their trip to the Super Bowl. So there's a lot of narrative here. There's a lot of redemption at play for both quarterbacks. One a multi-time MVP, one who's looking to secure an MVP this season, and Josh Allen. So common it's more or less like you said, a pick 'em. It is a toss up. It is a 1 point spread favoring the Ravens on the road, and I feel that is a little bit justified based on how well Baltimore has played, not just of late, but how they've played against top competition all season long. So, do you think that the Ravens hold serve in this one as well, or do the Bills maybe pick up that win in a more important matchup certainly than they had earlier this season against Baltimore.
Yeah, this is a tough one to pick. I think actually the Bills open as a 1-point favorite, but then the line is shifted to the
Hmm.
Ravens to 1 point. I know the Ajon saying was that it's 3 points for the home team. I know you've said that it's now more like closer to 2 points for the home
Hmm.
team. So, really could go either way. They met earlier this season. Ravens winning that game easily, 35-10. That was in Baltimore, of course. This will be a really interesting matchup. I mean, Derrick Henry had 199 rush yards in that game, 87-yard rushing touchdown. This is a game where it feels like on a neutral field. This is one of those they play 100 times. Maybe each team wins 50 games. These teams are
Hmm.
that evenly matched. These quarterbacks are that evenly matched. The two MVP frontrunners, which actually, according to the first team All Pro voters, there's actually a chance that Lamar could win the MVP. I know
Hmm.
everyone's kind of assumed it's Josh Allen, but we'll see if that's the case. So I'm a little torn. I think the way for the Ravens to win is to feed Derrick Henry the ball. I think that's their best path to victory. The Bills couldn't stop them last time. I think in Buffalo's idea is let's make Lamar throw. I actually got to look up Zay Flowers whether he'll play or not, but he's not going to be
Hmm.
100%. So that's a big X factor as well. The Ravens receiver, but I'm going to lean Buffalo for two reasons in this game. First and foremost, if you watch the wild card round, the home team actually won every game but one. The only road team to win was the Washington Commanders. I do think Buffalo this season, counting the playoffs, is 9-0. They're so dominant at home. They're used to the conditions. Like I said, wind, cold. Josh Allen can pass through the air. James Cook played amazing this last game. James Cook is a very good running back. One of the most underrated players in the NFL, finishing first in the NFL, tied for first, actually, with Derrick Henry and Jahmyr Gibbs in rushing touchdowns. So, reason one I've got the Bills winning is the home field advantage, which, it might be worth a field goal, might be worth a win. And then reason number two, and now he played pretty good last week. He played
Hmm.
better last year. Lamar seems to be turning the corner, but when I look at these guys' this playoff stats on the big stage, Lamar Jackson's playoff numbers, Tom, 8 touchdown passes and 6 interceptions. Josh Allen's playoff numbers, 23 touchdown passes and only 4 interceptions. Josh Allen, simply put, is a guy that I trust more. Oddly enough, Tom, I think there's an actual narrative out there that Josh Allen doesn't win in the playoffs, which, by the way, he's got a better than a 500 record in the playoffs as a quarterback. And the narrative of Lamar Jackson not winning in the playoffs, from a numbers perspective, he is in part responsible for that. Whereas
Hmm.
Josh Allen, he's not really responsible for many of these losses. I mean, they lost that game against the Chiefs a couple years ago because of a literal coin flip. They lost the game last year because Stephon Diggs dropped a touchdown and the kicker missed the kick. And then the Bills defense, like I said in the past in the playoffs, has really, really struggled for Josh Allen sometimes. So I think he's a really, really good playoff quarterback. I mean, game on the line, you know, probably only one guy in the NFL I trust more than Josh Allen. That is Patrick Mahomes. So who's the MVP in this game? I expect an MVP effort from Josh Allen. Expect Lamar to play well, but I think Allen's going to be a little bit better. I'm going to lean the Bills in this one. But man, at the same time, I could see Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson running all over that Bills defense. Really, it could go either way, but the trust factor in the home team, the
Hmm.
trust factor in the quarterback, give me the Buffalo Bills to get back to the AFC Championship game.
Yeah, this is an incredibly tough one in between two teams that I mean I find just really enjoyable to watch. I know not everybody is as big a fan of the run style that the Ravens have, but they make it work. And then this is a matchup of two teams that really seem to know themselves, that have not just executed in the regular season, but used that time to ultimately determine how they can best win, which I think is a really, really important factor. I mean, you look at how the season has gone for the Bills. They had a couple of losses early on in the season to Baltimore and to Houston. Both of those road games, by the way, whereas this one's going to be at home. And
Both of
then
those teams still in the playoffs, by the
both of
way.
those teams still in the playoffs, and then ripped off several good wins. We're going to kind of discount that last one against New England to end the season because they weren't really going for much of anything. So to after that loss to the Houston Texans, to have one quote unquote meaningful loss, which by the way was a 44-42 a shootout against the LA Rams. That's a really strong way for the Bills to
They're also
finish the
still in the
season.
playoffs, Tom.
Yeah, no,
So you're telling
and
me their losses are against some of the best teams in the NFL?
pretty much, yeah. And you look at the Ravens, starting out the season with two losses. They only lost three other games the rest of the way, ending the season again on a strong note with 4 wins, including a performance to clinch a playoff spot, not even let the Pittsburgh and Cincinnati game matter for anything. So this is one where I really do struggle going back and forth on this. I know like the playoffs
You're
success with
picking the
Josh Allen.
Ravens. I know you're picking the Ravens,
The,
Tom. Just get it done with.
well, I mean, the playoff success of Josh Allen and the Bills makes it really compelling to want to go for them. I will lean with the Ravens. I mean, I put them in the Super Bowl, and obviously there was nothing that was shown over this past weekend in how either game went. Neither outcome surprised me. Maybe the margin a little bit, but I mean, I really feel vindicated in saying how little I thought of the Denver Broncos, given how the last game went. I probably should have picked that for our upcoming Locks of the Week segment because we would have looked at least a little bit better as a collective.
You know what? We have a winning
But
record on the season, Tom.
we'll take an off week
Negative
here and there for
Nancy.
sure.
Negative Nancy. It was a tough
But
week. It happens once in a while.
of course, but I do think that the Ravens have their formula for winning, and it's going to be smash mouth football. It's going to be the AFC version of Thunder and Lightning. You've got Montgomery and Gibbs in Detroit. Well, in Baltimore, you've got Henry and you've got Lamar. And when you see them adding in wrinkles like Derrick Henry taking a wildcat snap with Lamar Jackson in motion, I mean, that's how many teams in the NFL, just like in the modern era. I know that this is completely far into anything pre, 2020 even. But how many teams can actually run that sort of thing with any sort of credibility, where you could actually believe that there's a direct snap to Derrick Henry and he gets the ball to Lamar for some sort of sweep motion or something like that? It's just absolutely incredible to
Those
see
guys
these
are a
guys
nightmare,
participate,
man.
playing at the peak of their powers essentially. So that's why I'm going to go with Baltimore in a very, very slight lean. I think both teams have a 50-50 puncher's chance of winning this one. I don't know what it comes down to. I don't even know if it comes down to like the last play or who, if it's offense or defense that's making it. Like this is a game where I can see a lot of different outcomes, and it's going to be, I think, the most compelling game to watch this weekend.
Let me give you another X factor we haven't talked about, which
Mm.
oddly enough, a lot of these playoff games go down to the kicking game. Tyler Bass last year missed a kick in the playoffs. He almost
Hmm.
got canned in Buffalo earlier this season. Ended up regrouping, kicking the ball well down the stretch. Then, of course, Justin Tucker, who going into the season was the NFL's most accurate kicker of all time. He is no longer the NFL's most accurate kicker of all
Hmm.
time. He's missed a lot of kicks this season, double-digit kicks. He was arguably the worst kicker of the NFL this season. I don't know what the heck happened to Justin Tucker, especially from 50 plus. The guy has like the record 64-yard field goal. Now if he's at 50 plus, he can't seem to make a kick these days. So maybe Bass and Tucker, some guys that maybe there's some
Hmm.
question marks about. Maybe it goes down to one of those kickers. We talk about all the skill players: Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, James Cook. We talk about the receivers, the running backs, the quarterbacks. But one possession game, it might go down to which kicker makes it, which kicker
Hmm.
doesn't make it. And maybe, just maybe, Bass being at home and a little bit more comfortable in the surroundings, that could make a difference. Definitely for me as a fan. I mean, I think regardless whether it's Mahomes versus Allen or Mahomes versus Lamar, I think it's compelling regardless. It's must-watch TV regardless. I
Hmm.
do think the Mahomes Allen to me though is a little bit more exciting. So maybe it's my heart leaning towards wanting to see that matchup that's pushing me over the top in this toss up to go with the Bills.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be compelling stuff, and what a bit of a shame it is sometimes that when we talk about these grander overarching legacies, it does sometimes come down to somebody's foot, somebody's leg, that ultimately makes that outcome one way or another. A game where I don't think it's going to necessarily be that close, of course,
Mhm.
is going to be on Saturday, the first game of the divisional round, where the Kansas City Chiefs, coming off the bye, are playing the Kings of the 3:30 time slot on Saturdays. The Houston Texans, once again, they
Another
just
one.
cannot catch a break. That as a little bit of a joke, that might actually be an edge for them, except for the fact that I believe that in the divisional round, they are like 0-5 with averaging a 16-point spread against them or something along those lines. I forget what the
Mm-hmm.
exact stat was, but the Texans historically do not fare very well after getting out of the wild card round. I think we saw a little something from C.J. Stroud this past week, which is a testament to him, given how many weapons he's down with no Stephon Diggs, no Tank Dell. It's basically a run game with Joe Mixon behind a okay enough offensive line, and then we've got Nico
Throw the ball to
Collins. And then
Nico.
you're trying to patch things together with Robert Woods, Xavier Hutchinson, and John
John
Mechie.
Mechie.
So can the Texans? I'll put it to you this way: can the Texans make this one close? Of course, it's any given Sunday, or in this case, Saturday. So the Texans obviously have a chance to win, but I think the more realistic range of outcomes are: can they keep it close? Can they make it a representative game, or do you think this is one where the Chiefs can pull away and win by a significant margin?
I'm going to lean the Chiefs pull away and win by a significant margin. There's always the option for a backdoor cover, the classic game where maybe
Mhm.
Kansas City's in control. Maybe they're only up 7 or 8 points, but it ends with them running the clock out as opposed to Houston having the ball at the end of the game with a chance to tie the game. I mean, I think you look at these two teams played last month, Kansas City winning 27-19. Big X factor in that game for the Texans was Tank Dell. He played great
Mhm.
football. He also got injured getting a touchdown. Tank Dell will not be here for this game. Kansas City, by the way, completely owns Houston in recent memory. Going back to probably the best NFL game I've ever seen in person. Covered the game. Kansas City and Houston, the playoff game, the first Chiefs Super Bowl run where the Texans up 24-0 and Kansas City wins 51-31. They scored so many touchdowns in the second quarter, third quarter, and fourth quarter that the stadium ran out of fireworks, Tom. That's how crazy that game was. I think, Kansas City's offense got better down the stretch. They scored 27 and 29 against Houston and Pittsburgh, two of the better defenses in the league. I know Pittsburgh struggled a lot down the stretch. Their defense struggled against the Ravens. Overall, though, most of Pittsburgh struggles due to their lack of offense. Houston has struggled down the stretch. Most of their problems due to a lack of offense. Both of these teams have good defenses. The fact that Kansas City, with the return of Hollywood Brown, the return of Isaiah Pacheco, Xavier Worthy, he's a rookie, Tom. Every
Mhm.
single week this guy plays, he gets better and better and better. Kansas City won fairly comfortably last time out. I think they should win fairly comfortably here. I know Houston had a big win against the Chargers, but there's a lot of question marks about that offense, Tom. I think you look at the Charger game, the offense looked really, really bad most of the first half. They turned it up late. They played well in the second half, but I mean, they had a defensive touchdown. They also got a couple points on a blocked PAT going the other way. They forced 4 turnovers for Justin Herbert.
Mhm.
They gave their team good field position. It wasn't a true 32-point outburst, right? I mean, literally 9 of those points were just because of your defense and special teams there. So Kansas City has a really good defense. Chris Jones, Nick Bolton. I always think of defense, I think of it all 3 levels, Tom. Chris Jones on the D line, Nick
Mhm.
Bolton at the linebacker spot, Trent McDuffie at the cornerback spot. The Chiefs are good at all 3 levels. I think their defense is too good. Top 5 defense in the league. They were like second or third in a lot of categories. That last game against the Broncos kind of hurt the Chiefs' defensive and offensive numbers without any
Mhm.
starters playing. But most of
Yeah,
the
I don't
season,
count that. Yeah.
this was a top 2 or 3 defense. It's a Houston offense essentially with only one good receiver, Nico Collins. And Trent McDuffie is going to lock this dude up. The only guy to lock up Jamar Chase this season was McDuffie, by the way. So he's going to neutralize Nico Collins, and who else is going to be open? I mean, I
Mhm.
think you mentioned that the offensive line is just okay for Houston. Uh, Chris Jones is going to eat. Korloftis, this guy's going to eat. I think Kansas City is going to be too good defensively against that Houston offense. And I think Kansas City's offense is clicking on all cylinders. They've had 23 days to rest. Now, Mahomes should be healthy. Kelsey should be healthy, as he said on his podcast. He's feeling 22, like Taylor Swift, his boo-boo there, Tom Castleman. So, yeah, I expect Kansas City to really, really dominate in this game. I'm thinking of this, Tom. Everyone has this narrative around the Chiefs. They were 15-1 this season in games that, they didn't rest their guys. But a lot of close games this year. A lot of close games. Everyone's saying, they're lucky. They always find a way. With the Bills and Ravens looking really, really good right now. You know what I think this game's going to be on Saturday? 2 words. Statement game. The Chiefs will make a statement. They will beat Houston, and I think they will cover that 7-8 point spread. Give me the Chiefs in a fairly, fairly comfortable Saturday afternoon game.
Yeah, I think this one's going to end up feeling pretty comfortable for the Chiefs, even if I don't necessarily think it's going to be a blowout. And the reason why I don't think it's a blowout is that the Chiefs haven't really shown that explosiveness throughout this entire season. I understand they're getting some pieces back,
And
but
they
this
showed it
isn't.
with those pieces. They could have put up
Oh,
30
but
on Houston and the Steelers. They just ran the ball and ran the clock out in the fourth quarter, Tom.
yeah, I guess I don't
They looked
necessarily.
explosive, those games to me. Looked very explosive.
I think that the way that Houston played last week, I know that there was some of that was on bad luck. I mean, Justin Herbert throwing an interception that goes on his stat sheet, but it hit his tight end square in both hands, and he just
Or Lad
didn't have it.
McConkey's pick goes right through
Yeah,
his hands.
there was a couple that really weren't on Justin Herbert, but I mean, good defense is putting yourself in position to make those types of plays. I think that Houston is better positioned defensively this week than they were playing on Christmas Day, for example, where you're coming off that really, really short rest. I think this is one where they're going to do I think, a better job, frankly, on defense, trying to hem in the Chiefs. The Chiefs do have some explosive players, but it's not that same level of explosion that it has been in the past. But this is going to be one where even though Houston's defense is going to keep it somewhat close, keep a little bit of a lid on Kansas City, I just don't see Houston's offense doing much of anything. So this is something where Kansas City, just inch by inch, minute by minute, quarter by quarter, is going to extend a lead. I don't think this is one that's going to be, wrap it up early. But I think it's going to kind of feel just inevitable, I guess is the best way that I can put it. I don't think it's going to go out with a bang. I think it's just going to be, as the game goes on, Kansas City more and more is just going to cinch this one up. And I mean, you call it a statement game. The word that popped into my head, a tune-up. This is exactly the type of playoff matchup that you're going to need as Kansas City if you're going to come off of this bye week where kind of sort of you had 2 bye weeks for a lot of your main players, as you sat a lot of important people against the Denver Broncos. It's 23 days, I think it is.
23
22,
days since
23.
their last play. They actually sat pretty much every important person.
Right. Like that's the sort of thing where if you're going to talk about rest versus rust, and you know me, I don't really subscribe to that overly much, but I think that this gets you back in the mood, back in the playoff spirit without necessarily a quote unquote threat of losing this football game. It'd be one thing if the Texans were fully healthy on offense, then I would actually be kind of concerned a little bit heading into this one for Kansas City's sake. As it currently stands, I think this is just going to be a ground and pound. This is going to be one that Kansas City just is going to win. Eventually, I think it's going to feel like a significant margin of victory. I think it's going to be one that maybe feels like it was a bigger win than the numbers suggest, if that makes sense. So that's how I'm feeling with this one. I'm fairly comfortable picking Kansas City in this one as well with you.
2 final things. Give you some numbers.
Sure.
One of the most automatic things in the history of sports would be Patrick Mahomes in the NFL divisional round. This is Mahomes' stats in the divisional round. He's got a 6-0 record, 1,813 total yards. That's more than 300 yards passing and rushing combined. 16 total touchdowns, almost 3 a game. 0 interceptions. 70.4 completion percentage, and 115.8 passer rating. This is Mahomes' round. He turns it up a little bit extra in the playoffs, especially in that divisional round. The team's not quite as good as maybe the one in the AFC Championship game or the Super Bowl, he owns this round, Tom. Mahomes absolutely owns the divisional round. This is his time. It is Patty's time in this
Hmm.
scenario. And then the second thing, I just forgot what I was about to say, to be honest, Tom. But definitely liking Mahomes' chances in this scenario. Oh, it was my preseason AFC Championship pick. A
Mm.
round earlier, I think Houston, in part due to injuries, but in part that maybe they weren't quite as good as I thought.
Yeah, a little column A, a
But
little column B.
this is definitely a game that I had circled, which is actually almost ironic, Tom. Here's my point. It's going to be good karma for the Chiefs. Because I don't know if you remember 2 years ago, I
Hmm.
picked the Chiefs Niners Super Bowl with the Chiefs winning it all. I was right. I had the Chiefs and Dolphins in the AFC title game. They met in Kansas City's first playoff game instead. This time I had the Chiefs and Texans in the AFC title game. They also meet in Kansas City's first playoff game. So, for a guy that believes in all sorts of weird stuff like I do. I mean, I'm a weird guy. I am very superstitious. I'm going to say some good superstition for Chief fans like myself.
There you go. Well, we've got another matchup coming up. I have no superstition transition to go from this matchup to the Eagles and the Rams. This is one where we saw a Rams team that really has taken off. I mean, you look at where they were 1-4 at one point this season, banged up with Cooper Cup, Puka Nakua, each missing time. A defense that at one point I believe was worst in the NFL, so bad that it made the Bears' offense look fantastic for that game. Well, fantastic is a little bit of a stretch. The
Decent.
Bears got a decent win out of
Decent.
that one. But you compare and contrast that with the Eagles, who had a game that, I mean, they won. They did what they were supposed to do in winning their matchup against the Green Bay Packers. But this is one where I definitely walked away from that game feeling like the team I picked to win the Super Bowl, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more. I'm willing to offer some grace, of course, that Jalen Hurts is still working his way back after missing a couple of games toward the end of the season, and that the Packers are no slouch when it comes to playing defense. But the Rams have really shown something with their young players. Jared Verse has been phenomenal for them. And of course, you turn around, you look at Matthew Stafford. I believe the record for him with the Rams is 18-3 as the full time starter in the waning months of the season and into the postseason. So this is one where I know it's about a touchdown give or take, but maybe the Rams have a decent shot at being a live underdog on this one, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is probably on paper, the second most competitive game we have over the weekend.
Hmm.
I definitely, I think there's something to be said about playoff experience, about a really good quarterback, about a really good coach, really good playmakers. I mean, the Rams have Matthew Stafford, who,
Hmm.
I mean, I think along with Mahomes, the only guy left that's won a Super Bowl in these playoffs. There has to be something said about that,
Hmm.
right? Jared Goff made one. I know Russell Wilson won one ages ago, but he's already out, and it's let's be honest, a different version of Russell Wilson than the
Of
one
course.
that it was in Seattle. So I mean, Matthew Stafford is still really good. He's had a couple injuries the last couple of years, but when Matthew Stafford is healthy, he's a borderline top 5 to 8 quarterback in the NFL. I mean, we talk about the first tier of quarterbacks in Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, and Lamar Jackson. I would definitely say that Matthew Stafford is definitely in that second tier of quarterbacks. He's a very, very good quarterback. Sean McVay is one of the best coaches in the NFL. Puka Nakua, talk about second tier quarterbacks. How about the second tier top receivers in the NFL? I mean, we got Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, and Tyreek Hill, the 4 best. Well, Puka Nakua, A.J. Brown, and Amon-Ra St. Brown is probably that second tier top receivers. So the Rams have a really good team. That defense has changed the season for them, right? Went
Hmm.
from being awful to being really, really good. They were all over Sam Darnold's face. He was seeing shadows in that game this last week. No doubt about that, making that a whole other debate in itself. The Vikings may or may not go to Darnold anymore.
Hmm.
Regardless, Sam Darnold in that playoff game lost himself a lot of money A lot of
Hmm.
money left on the table with that playoff performance or lack thereof. I am still going to lean the Eagles in this game because I really, really like the offensive line in Saquon Barkley. I mean, Stafford and Hurts are pretty close. Obviously, Hurts is more of a
Hmm.
dual threat. Stafford is, probably the better passer. But I think we have two really, really good quarterbacks. I would actually lean Stafford, to be honest, Tom. But I think Jalen Hurts is a really strong quarterback. Obviously, some really good receivers. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Puka Nakua, Cooper Kupp, terrific duos. But I think the combo of the Eagles' offensive line and Saquon Barkley, who Kyron Williams is one of the best backs as well in the NFL, but I think Saquon Barkley is just different. He's just different. He's at home as well. That Eagles defense has played really, really good this season. They have been, by a lot of metrics, the number one or number two defense in the
Hmm.
entire National Football League. I think the Rams will have a little bit of harder time facing them. They got a great secondary. Love the rookie Cooper DeJean for them. Darius Slay making plays again, more like prime big play Slay.
Hmm.
So I like Philadelphia at home. I'm going to pick the Eagles. As far as who's going to cover, I'm almost leaning towards staying away from it, Tom.
Oh yeah.
I don't have this in betting locks of the week. I'm going to try very hard not to bet on it myself. But I would actually lean the Rams covering the 6 points. If you had to ask me if I had to make a pick, the Rams cover, the Eagles win. Uh, Definitely going to pick Philly, but I would not be shocked if the Rams won. Like if Houston won, I'd be shocked. If the
Hmm.
Rams won, I would not be shocked. I'll put it that way.
No, that makes absolute sense. I mean, I'm also all in on the Eagles. I think that they're probably a better matchup against the Rams, or that rather that the Vikings and Kevin O'Connell with that offense, not quite a great matchup against that defense. Especially when you look at the caliber of quarterback. I know Sam Darnold, first round pick, Jalen Hurts, second round pick, but Darnold hasn't quite lived up to that pedigree. Whereas Jalen Hurts has had, I think, a lot more support in his career that has helped him further himself along than what the Vikings and well many teams have done for Sam Darnold. If anything, you could say that Kevin O'Connell and everything that he was doing put Sam Darnold in position to make a lot of money. I know that he's left some on the table with his performances to end the season, but teams will definitely be calling for his services next year. I think moving back to this matchup, that the run game. It's a lot more of a physical up and down the field run game. I mean, Cam Akers, Aaron Jones, decent running backs, but none of them are comparable to Saquon Barkley. And I think the same thing of the entirety of the Eagles' offensive line. I think that there's not many players in the league just that you could pick off of any other team that would be, I think, replacing the Eagles on the offensive line. They borderline have a Pro Bowl line just with their guys. And I think that's going to be significant. I think it's going to frustrate this defense that is going to be young. It's going to have to be a patient defense. They're going to have to learn or not necessarily learn, but stay within the gap integrity. And I know that it can kind of be a difficult thing for younger players, especially in a big playoff moment where they want to make a big play. The Eagles are absolutely going to punish you with that. And to say nothing of the fact that I think Jalen Hurts was off this past week against the Packers. There's nothing that in his play that's telling me that he can't regain that, get back on the same page with Devontae Smith and AJ Brown and Dallas Goedert, and just have this really synergistic play pass, a run pass offense. And then you flip it over to the defensive side. Um, you know, I think it's a slightly lesser version across the board of all players. I think Williams lesser than Saquon Barkley. I'd probably say Puka Nakua is the best receiver stepping on the field in this game, but Cooper Kupp has definitely shown that he's taken a little bit of a step back, understandably so as he's gotten a bit older. So I think that
Smith is
the
better than
Eagles,
Cup. It's a virtual wash.
yeah,
I
yeah, that's
think
what I
right
would say.
now probably
One, two,
slight edge
one,
to
two, three,
Puka over
four.
AJ Brown,
Mm-hmm.
slight edge for Smith over Cup. Virtual
Exactly.
wash to me.
Yeah, and the Eagles defense I think is going to do a really really nice job trying to pen things in against the Rams. So I'm also pretty comfortable picking the Eagles in this one. I think it certainly will be close. I think the Eagles have to dispel a little bit of the concern that they didn't look great in that game against the Packers, that they had a lot of not necessarily luck, but they had the ball bounce their way, sometimes quite literally on the opening kickoff of the game, for example, which really set the tone for the
That
rest of the
helps.
game. I mean, when you can get the ball starting the second half, and you also basically get the ball starting the first half, that's a cheat code. Even if it was a little bit of a helmet to helmet play, and I don't really know how it was conclusive one way or another on who recovered what. If I'm being completely
As
honest with
Bear
you,
fans will take it.
yeah,
Is
as
Eagles minus 5.5 betters will take it.
that too. So yeah, I think Eagles in this one is definitely going to be a fun one. The most fun of the NFC matchups, although Commanders Lions that can be fun with points, if not necessarily outcome.
One final note on the
Hmm.
Eagles Rams, then we can get into this Commanders game. One stat for you, Tom: the
Hmm.
Rams defense 22nd against the run in the NFL based on yards. So it's a fairly good matchup for the
Hmm.
Eagles offense versus them. I think how can Jalen Hurts play? Can he come back to play better? That'll be key. A.J. Brown definitely has to get more than one catch. I might be reading that book on the sidelines. Let's
Hmm.
see him deliver as well on the field. Got to get more than one catch to win the game. But yeah, I agree. Eagles win a game, but should be a competitive game, not a blowout in this one, in my
Hmm.
opinion.
Yeah, and then another game that looks like it could be on the way to a blowout already. Just looking at the line on this one, Lions hosting the Washington Commanders. The Commanders winning, I mean, a thrilling game. I was surprised. I thought this game was not going to necessarily be all that compelling, and
I
it
told
ended
you
up
it was going to
being
be the best game of the
it
week.
ended
You
up
didn't
being
listen
the
to me,
most
Tom.
entertaining game of the week.
It was.
Even if it didn't put up quite as many points as we would have liked. I mean, Jaden Daniels and the way that he played was fantastic. I thought, Baker Mayfield and really by proxy Mike Evans and Marshawn Lattimore. I thought that matchup was fantastic. And I mean, the young team keeps winning. They keep playing like they belong, like they have nothing to lose. If we're going to throw out the sports cliches and everything, but this is a game where it's definitely a step up in class all around. Even with several players on the defensive side injured for the Lions, they are still formidable in no small part because they have a head coach caliber defensive coordinator in Aaron Glenn, who is just
Mhm.
absolutely fantastic at scheming up a defense that keeps uh, everybody in a position to continue to have success, even if they're not necessarily top of the line defensive players. The Lions still find a way to field a good defense, a defense that flummoxed Sam Darnold and helped the Lions
What'd you
clinch.
say, Tom?
Flummoxed,
Flummoxed. What does that
flummoxed
mean?
Sam.
Confused?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, he was bamboozled and otherwise unsure of himself to close out the season. And I think the Lions. Hmm, I hesitate to say that they will be able to do the same thing against Jaden Daniels because he has certainly shown a ton of poise throughout the season. Whereas we've seen Sam Darnold before kind of get flustered at times, we haven't really seen that from the rookie for the Commanders. And on the flip side, I think this is where the big edge goes. I mean, there's a reason that the Lions have in the regular season a 222-point differential, even with all the injuries on defense. It's that their offense is borderline unstoppable. You have, again, similar to the Eagles, a fantastic offensive line, and then you have weapons at every level. David Montgomery should be playing in this game to pair up with Jameer Gibbs. You've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, and Jameson Williams as your primary receivers. And then Jared Goff, of course, at the helm is just commanding all of it and quarterbacking all of it really, really well. This is a game where I think it's going to be exciting to watch to see what kind of what comes up. I don't necessarily know how close it's going to be, though. I think the Commanders have had a really good season. I had a slight lean towards Tampa last week, but regardless of who won that game, I feel more than confident about the Lions in this one.
I think this game is going to be a lot closer than you or many people
Mm,
think, Tom Castleman. I am a huge Jaden Daniels fan. You look at the stats for Jaden Daniels against the Blitz this season, one of the very best in the
mm,
NFL. He is, if you watch him play the game, it's one of those things where if you watch him with your eye test, as soon as pressure comes his way, he knows exactly when to take a step forward, exactly when to get rid of the ball. This kid looks like a 10-year NFL veteran, Tom. That is how good Jaden Daniels looks. I have absolutely fallen in love with Jaden Daniels. The guy's an incredible quarterback. More about that in Locks of the Week, by the way, and Statement of the Week. But Jaden Daniels, statistically, Tom, I think he was fourth in the NFL in QBR this season. Let me confirm that stat. Fourth or fifth in QBR. The guy just, he doesn't turn the ball over, yet he can make plays with his legs and his arm. There is no weaknesses in his game. Now, he is literally Lamar Jackson 2.0. He's a little bit younger. He doesn't have quite as good as an offensive line, doesn't have quite as good as targets as Lamar Jackson, but he is basically Lamar Jackson 2.0. Fourth in QBR, National Football League, Jaden Daniels this season. By the way, Goff is sixth, Mahomes is eighth, Allen is first, Jackson is second. So that's what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the top 8 guys in QBR still playing in the playoffs. So it pays to have a good quarterback, as you can tell.
For sure.
So I think that the Lions defense, they looked really good against the Vikings. I think there's a little bit of injuries. I think that Washington has a great way of running the ball, throwing the short passes, running Daniels, running their guys. They'll have a way to slow this game down. That Bucks game, by the way, a little bit less points than we expected, Tom. Not because teams weren't scoring. A, they settled for a couple of field goals. B, it was a lot of long drives. So,
Yep.
it was definitely not a game where teams were punting. In fact, Washington did not punt the whole game. Daniels had no turnovers and no punts on his offense. So, because that Lions defense is banged up, I think Washington's going to have their way with the Lions defense. I think Jaden Daniels will have a great game. With that said, as much as I like Jaden Daniels, his running backs, pretty good. Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler, above average running backs. David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs is probably you got to factor in, okay, Saquon and Derrick Henry. The Ravens and Eagles have the best running backs overall. But you look at the 1-2 punch and what both guys can do, I might say the third best backfield in the entire NFL in Montgomery and Gibbs. Gibbs especially, man. This guy is a top 5 back in the league, in my opinion, Jahmyr Gibbs. So I think Goff also has a better offensive line, maybe the best offensive line in the NFL. I think he's got a little bit better depth at receiver. He's got a great tight end, certainly. So I think Washington will be just fine against the Lions defense. I think the Washington defense, which is mediocre at best, looking at the stats, they're going to have a hard time against the Lions offense. And it's a game that the Lions offense will outscore Washington. That's simply put, the Lions win. I would lean over 55.5 points, Tom, on the over-under. I do think that Washington covers 9.5 points, though. I actually have it 31-27 Lions, but a game where it's going to be just, again, more of that situation where the Lions run the clock out at the end as opposed to Washington, going down 30 seconds to go, chance to win the game. Maybe a little bit more comfortable win than 4 points, but I do not think this will be a blowout. I think Washington should keep this game close because their rookie quarterback, he does not play like a rookie. The kid is the truth. I like Caleb Williams as a Bears fan. If I had to redo the draft, I would 100% take Jaden Daniels with the first pick, and I would not think twice about it, Tom. And I'll take Caleb with the second pick, by the way. I love Caleb Williams. Generational talent. Jaden Daniels, better.
That's a whole different thing to unpack. As you know, I'm not quite as bullish, although I think that the Commanders certainly have earned the benefit of the doubt, if you will, on this one, that they can definitely make this a game. I don't know if I'm necessarily going to say it's like a full-on blowout. I think it's going to be a fairly comfortable win for Detroit, if only because Dan Campbell has shown a propensity for going for it on fourth downs, going for...
Washington does the same thing, by the way. Is this actually a showdown of the two teams that are the best at fourth down and go for it the most? And
but
that'll
I
be
think
very,
that
very important.
one's better and more equipped than the other. So
I
I'm
think
going the direction.
statistically, Washington has the best fourth down conversion rate in the NFL, Tom. And I believe that's the stat I saw.
I'd have to double check that one. But
I'm going to double
I'm
check that as
going
well.
Lions. So that's the divisional round. A lot of exciting games that we are going to be looking forward to seeing and recapping. And of course, it takes us up to championship week next week. But speaking of a championship game, we've got the Ohio State Buckeyes and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, two teams that have had storied histories with postseason football at the collegiate level, find themselves a different path to getting to a championship game than we otherwise would see. Ohio State 13-2, Notre Dame 13-1 on the regular season, and then of course have gone through the slog that has been the college football playoff this year. Common, this one has been really just Ohio State by a mile against so many teams that they have played. Whereas Notre Dame has had a lot of, tight, contested, grinded out type of wins, or at least comparatively to the rest of the teams in each stage of the college football playoff. Is this one where we're again going to see the Ohio State Buckeyes just running away with this one? Or do you think that Marcus Freeman's going to have the Fighting Irish keeping this one at least reasonably close, if not having a shot at outright winning?
Yeah. Real quick, Tom, I don't mean
Hmm.
to cut you off on this, but I have pulled it up and I want to say it before we move too forward.
Hmm.
Fourth down percentage conversion rate in 2024, number one in the NFL, Washington Commanders,
Hmm.
82% of the time. Which, by the way, here's a very interesting list. We talked about top teams having top quarterbacks in QBR. Number two in fourth down conversion rate, the Buffalo Bills still
Hmm.
playing. Number three, the Philadelphia Eagles still playing.
Hmm.
Number four, the Kansas City Chiefs. The Lions are number six.
Oh
The
wow,
Rams and
they're
Lions
worse than I
tied for
thought.
sixth.
Hmm.
Houston is eighth. Tampa is ninth. Denver is 10th. The only team in the top 10 in fourth down rate that's not in the playoffs is the Falcons.
Hmm.
So I'm looking at the top eight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the top eight teams in fourth down conversion rate
Hmm.
are still in the playoffs.
That means that they're probably good teams.
And they're aggressive, and it works. We play
Yeah.
to win the game. Hello. Hello, Tom. Herm Edwards said it best. We
Yeah.
play to win the game.
And yeah, play to end the game with the football on the offensive side as opposed to the defense. Take a knee after earning that one, as opposed to hoping you can run the clock out. Certainly could have been a valuable lesson for a lot of teams this year that had last second losses,
Mm.
in
All
particular
right,
to
let
the
me get back to
Washington
the
Commanders.
college, though.
But
Just
let's
it's
get back to the
very
college
interesting,
level.
though. You
Yeah,
look at this data, Tom.
yeah, I didn't even check that.
Yeah, very, very interesting data.
Hmm.
Uh, by the way, here's one for you. Baltimore they're 20th in the NFL in fourth down. So they're
Hmm.
the only team left that is not good on fourth down.
Which is
Even the
interesting
Chargers were
given
13th, Tom. I mean,
it's
pretty much
hmm.
only playoff teams that were below average at fourth down were Minnesota, gone, Green Bay, gone, and Baltimore, gone next. So,
I
uh,
find that fascinating because you arguably have the two best individual players for a fourth down play in Lamar and
maybe they're not
Henry.
good at fourth and like four, fourth and five.
Maybe that's it.
Yeah.
Anyway, we
Anyway, back to
digress.
college. Back to
Back to the college
college.
game. I mean, it's just so much more fun to talk about the NFL because I just find it to be more compelling. I think that the Irish have been a really strong team all season long, but it feels like this is a difference in class, and perhaps quite literally, given how much NIL money the Ohio State Buckeyes have spent on building out their team. I mean, you look at some of their leaders. Trevion Henderson didn't have a 1,000-yard rushing season, but that's because he's splitting carries with Quinshon Judkins. Like
They both have more than
this,
900.
this team is just so loaded. I think for Ohio State that Notre Dame has done well to get to this point. I think that they pretty much were favored in every single matchup. I think probably except for the Georgia game. Um, this is, but I don't know if it's a stylistic, aesthetic thing. Like, I just not a super huge fan of Riley Leonard as a quarterback, at least from a, archetypical standpoint of this is a guy that's going to sit in the pocket and win with some big throws. He's a guy that definitely uses his legs a lot more, is pretty dynamic in that regard, but it feels like this Ohio State team, perhaps more than Penn State, is going to be equipped to handle that. And on the flip side, I think their offense is just so much, higher power than anything that Notre Dame has faced in this postseason. Not sure if you agree with that, but I definitely think that this is going to be a game that is a stark difference and maybe kind of underwhelming almost for a national championship.
I'm a little torn on, whether this game is going to be close or not. I think it's going to be a little bit closer. Obviously, I think Ohio State's going to win. I agree with you, Tom. They have more offensive firepower, two running backs over 900 yards. Jeremiah Smith had one catch against Texas, the talented freshman. I don't think that's going to happen again on the national championship
Hmm.
game, personally. But I mean, I'm talking about fourth down conversions in the NFL. In college football, this is almost like old school football, Tom. The top two scoring defenses in college football are in the national championship game. Ohio State number one on defense, Notre Dame number two on defense. One thing Notre Dame has going for them, though, is they have a really, really good offensive line and a really, really good defensive line.
Hmm.
You always say the game is won in the trenches, the big guys up front. Notre Dame has as good as, if not better, offensive line than any team in the country. So Ohio State, like, how do they make these talented receivers, Ibuka, Jeremiah Smith, these running backs, Henderson, Judkins, how are they so good? The line gives them open space to let them work. There's not going to be as many holes for Henderson against Notre Dame. Notre Dame has a really good D line, a really good offensive
Hmm.
line. Ohio State won't be able to get as many sacks. They won't be able to get as many pressures as usual. So I do think Notre Dame could keep it close. I love Marcus Freeman as the head coach. He's terrific. Riley Leonard actually did pass pretty good when he had to last game out. I think certainly a Georgia team with a healthy Carson Beck that's not throwing picks is fairly explosive, but obviously they were a little bit short-handed in that game. So I agree with you. This is the best team Notre Dame has played without question this season, and that's going to be tough for them. I do think Ohio State, Will Howard at quarterback, have probably a slight edge at the passing portion of the game, as you said. So I do think Ohio State's going to win, but I mean, 8-point spread with that Notre Dame defense,
Hmm.
with that Notre Dame offensive line, with that Notre Dame coaching staff, I think the Irish can keep this within one touchdown. Again, similar situation to what I said earlier. Maybe it's not like where they're going to go down to win the game. Either Ohio State runs the clock out or it's
Hmm.
like 30 seconds left. They start on their own 10-yard line and we're pitchy woo-wooing this thing. I think it'll be a competitive game, one that Ohio State will control, one that will ultimately win. But I don't think it's going to be a blowout. That 8-point spread is probably fair, but I would lean on the side of Notre Dame covering that spread
Hmm.
despite them losing the game.
I think this is going to be a fairly comfortable win for Ohio State. That might be having some folks turning off the TV a little bit early, frankly. I think that
Mhm.
Ohio State is just on an absolute tear. I'm not sure what got into them in that game against Michigan. I know Michigan also showed up with a big win against Alabama in their bowl game, but this is an Ohio State team that's a 1 point loss against the Oregon Ducks. And then a 3 point loss against the Michigan Wolverines from being undefeated. And again, I don't know what happened in that last game of the season. That's one where I felt it was uncharacteristic of what Ohio State has done this year. Um, Maybe it served as a bit of a motivator, a galvanizing factor, because none of these games to this point have been very close for the Buckeyes. And I'm inclined to think that it's not going to be especially close against a Notre Dame as well. I think that this is one where
Ohio State covers for you?
I mean, regardless of if it's a cover or not, I think that if we'll use the cover for this example, Ohio State might win by might not cover the number, but it's not going to be in a way that Notre Dame's like threatening. I don't think it's going to be in a game where Ohio State is marching down and it's the last drive and they score to win. And I don't think it's going to be them stopping Notre Dame from scoring on the last drive to seal the game, to stop a Notre Dame game winning drive. I think it's going to be one that feels comfortable. And even if Notre Dame then makes the score close with a field goal or a touchdown or some Hail Mary prayer toward the end, that's still not going to feel close, even if the number might be. So that's my vibe with the Ohio State Buckeyes on this one. So we'll see. I mean, I hope that it is going to be a quality game. I think that's something that the college football playoff kind of needs, frankly, in order to kind of justify how the season has been. Because I'm sure there's a lot of different opinions on how this inaugural 12-team playoff has worked out. I don't know what it necessarily says if 8 seed over 7 seed by a blowout. I don't know what that says about the game as a whole. If that is a vision that the college football committee, wants to have as a precedent or something along those lines. If it is, hey, truly anybody can win it if you can get in. I don't know. This is going to be a lot of rhetoric and hand wringing for another time. But I hope for the college football sport itself, or for the current iteration of the playoff, for the people that want it to succeed, I hope that they get the close outcome that is, I think, going to be a little bit more palatable than what is, I fear, a blowout.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting about the seeding. I don't know if you heard the rumor about the NFL thinking about doing this,
Mm,
going to top records. So they still have
no.
wild card teams, division winners. Rumor that the NFL is going to go to, for example, the Vikings would be the home team against the Rams because they had a better record. Which, by the way, I 100% support. The college
Mm,
football playoff, mixed results with the 12-team playoff, because there's two ways to look at this. One way is that Notre Dame and Ohio State would not have been in the 14 playoff field. So they could go to this, point to this. Look, guys, if it were a 14 playoff, these are the two best teams that wouldn't be there. I could also argue that Notre Dame is not the second best team. I do think, looking at Ohio State, they're probably the best team in the country. Notre Dame, I would probably lean Texas. Again, that Ohio State Texas game, that scoop and score at the end made it a little bit, worse. A healthy Georgia team, who knows? Obviously, I think
mhm,
you can make a case for Texas maybe beating Notre Dame. Notre Dame's one of the best teams in the country. I don't know if they're the second best team, but they got to do the 12-team playoff if they're going to do it. But you got to assign it based on who's the best, not based on who the conference winners are. Boise State, obviously, Arizona State, obviously, these teams are not supposed to be 3 and 4 seeds, Tom. That's what's ridiculous to me.
mm.
So you should rank them based on the best teams. A conference champion can get an auto bid, but a conference champion shouldn't get an auto 4 or 5 seed or whatever, Tom. They should be wherever they are as far as being the best team. That's my opinion.
Mm.
So, but yeah, I mean, overall, by no means is it a perfect system. By no means is it a perfect system. But overall, I lean more good than bad in the CFP playoff, because I think that's the number one evidence for them. These two teams would not be in the championship if it were not for the playoff, and they both are. And I think that's a good thing for the CFP. And
Do you
blowouts will
think?
happen no matter what, Tom. We had the 4 field playoff blowouts happen. We had the college football BCS blowouts still happen. Sometimes we get lucky, sometimes we don't. The system could be better. I would lean 8 teams personally. I would see them based on who's the best. But more or less, I think I would view this as a little bit more of a success for the 12-team playoff as opposed to a failure, because we had 2 teams getting in that would not have made the CFP semis otherwise in a 4-team field or in a BCS system.
Mm, I don't know. It's one of those things where I don't know if this necessarily says who's the best team. I don't know what it says about having a quote unquote champion for a team that didn't win their conference that didn't even compete in their conference championship. I don't know if that's what the takeaway should be. But that's a different.
That's why I'm an eye test guy, Tom.
I mean, for me, that kind of feels a little bit too close to the whole baseball uses the 162 season to determine who's the best team in the World Series is who wins the tournament. This feels a little bit too close to that when it, I
And
think,
Ohio
ought to be
State
more
wouldn't have been the
about.
best team in the regular season with those 2 losses, though.
No,
Who was that? Oregon would have finished as the #1 team.
right. I don't. I don't.
And Ohio
It,
State
it,
just
it
beat them
depends
by
on what you
20
want.
points, Tom. They
There's
beat them by
there's
like 3
they also
touchdowns
lost to them by a point. They
on the
also lost
road
to them by a
by
point.
8 points. On a neutral field, they beat them by 3 touchdowns.
At a different time in the season. It's just you never step in the same river twice, Common. Moving on to betting locks of the week. Not a banner week for
Come
the
on, Tom.
show.
Come
Oh, it
on.
wasn't. It wasn't a banner week.
It's been a banner season. Well, for you at least. I'm back to
Anyways,
average 11,
I'm
11,
I'm
and
I'm
12.
dragging us kicking and screaming to a winning record.
You're
Uh
16 and 8, Tom. Come
I
on.
know.
16 and
Uh
8. You went 1 and 2. We both
hit
missed the
big on that.
Commanders Bucks over. You got the
Hmm.
Notre Dame win, which by the
Yep.
way I tailed online. And
Nice.
you had the Vikings -1 over the Rams. That didn't work out.
Mm.
I went for the Chargers -3 over the Texans. That failed. And the Broncos +8 at the Bills. I should have gone the Washington +3 because I felt it. I didn't go that route. Not either way, I'm 500 on the season. You're 66.66666%.
Hmm.
What do you got for us this week, Tom?
So I'm going to go with two that I feel fairly confident in. Like I mentioned, I picked the Ravens to win against the Bills. So naturally, with a single point spread, it makes sense to pick the Ravens on that for a lock of the week. Ohio State, again, as I mentioned, I don't necessarily feel comfortable saying this is going to be a close game. So I'm going to lean Ohio State with that 8-point spread against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And then I was stumped for what my third lock of the week is going to be.
What was
I
the number
haven't
on the first one again? I'm sorry.
-1 for the Ravens.
Okay.
Um, I don't have a good feeling on totals or lines or anything, so I feel probably the best one I can come up with is Houston +4.5 in the first half. I think
Mm.
this is one where Houston, coming off of a win against the Chargers, playing last week, already in a bit of a rhythm. Maybe Kansas City has a little bit of fits and starts coming out to start this one. And like I said, I think this is going to be one where Kansas City doesn't run away with it early, but I think they just close it out late. And so I don't feel great on this one, but I'm just going to do an ever so slight lean. If I have to pick a third lock for the week, I'm going to go that Houston +4.5 in the first half line, as opposed to touching that 8-point spread by the end of the game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't feel great about the locks this week either.
Hmm.
But the one that I feel the best about is going to be Washington +9.5 at the Lions. Like I said earlier, Lions defense got some injuries. Washington has a great offense. They got a great rookie quarterback. He's super poised. They're going to run the ball out with the quarterback, slow down the clock. It's inside a dome, which should be very, very good for the running quarterback, Jaden Daniels. Talk about rust versus rest. Maybe the Lions could be a little bit rusty to start, if
Hmm.
anything. But I really, really like Jaden Daniels. The guy's an absolute superstar. You can't really phase this guy. The pressure, the situations, he always seems to deliver. Broke the rookie record for fourth quarter touchdown passes this season. Washington's #1 in the NFL on fourth down this season. Talked about that earlier.
Hmm.
They're going to be going for it this game because that's how they can possibly win. Now, I'm picking the Lions to win, but a 9.5-point spread, that is a whole lot of points. I think Washington can cover that spread. I'm going to go with the Chiefs -8.5 over the Texans. Chiefs at home just beat them by think it was 8 last time out. I think it was 7.5, but the line's moved now to 8.5. But I'm going to stick with the top. Chiefs minus 8.5. I think it's going to be a statement game. It's a Texan offense that's now without Tank Dell, a guy that played in the last matchup. It's a Chiefs offense that their last two games that the starters played 27 and 29 points respectively. I don't think Houston's getting more than 20 points. I think the
Mhm.
Chiefs can win 27-17. Very, very good game for the defense. Good game for the offense. A Houston team with one receiver only, Nico Collins, and nobody else. Trent McDuffie locks them down. That Texan offense is going to struggle mightily against the Chiefs defense. And lastly, I was torn between two picks. I was looking at Notre Dame plus 8.5, but I'm going to go opposite you on another game, and that would be the Bills -1 against the Ravens. Actually, Bills +1,
Plus
excuse
one.
me
Yep.
now. Bills +1 against the Ravens. I'm not super confident in this game, but I like the money play. Bills money line even will get you a little bit more juice right there. Like I said earlier, Josh Allen more reliable in the playoffs. 23 touchdowns, 4 picks. Lamar Jackson 8 touchdowns and 6 picks. I like Buffalo's quarterback in this game better. I like Buffalo at home. 8-0 this season in the regular season, 9-0 counting the playoffs. They did beat the Chiefs at home as well. So I like the Bills in this game. In a close game, but I got an extra point,
Mhm.
Tom, and I
There you
like that
go.
point. Bills +1 against the Ravens.
All right, moving on to our trivia, and mine's a little bit odd. It was something that I don't think you necessarily would hear in like a trivia night or anything along those lines, but
I love
of
odd.
course, I don't know why I'm blanking on this one. A topic of conversation, of course, in Chicago is the search for the next Chicago Bears head coach, and there's been some hand wringing as a particular name, Mike McCarthy, has been thrown into the ring, and I get it, former Packers coach, but he has a Super Bowl ring. He
Mhm.
coached a player that Caleb Williams, kind of followed and has emulated his game after. He's patterned his game after Aaron Rodgers. So it would make some sense if the Bears wanted to go for it. Not necessarily the most exciting hire, but that's a different conversation for a different time. The fact of the matter is that Mike McCarthy does have a perception of not being a great tactician, not necessarily being a great coach in the playoffs, but he does have on his career a record of 10 losses and 11 wins. So this is going to be a little bit tricky, and there's not really a great format. But Common, can you give me the year that you would have to go back to for the Bears to reach 11 postseason wins? If we start from today and work our way backwards, how far would you have to go for 11 Chicago Bears postseason wins?
They've got like one in the last 10 years or something. So
Mm-hmm.
it's sheesh. I mean, my first thought was 85 Bears, but it's probably even further back because they haven't had much playoff success since then. So I'm
Yep,
going to
you do
go
have to
with
keep going
something
farther
like
back.
the 76 Bears or something.
A little farther back.
Farther back?
You got to go.
Oh,
You get no, not in the 70s.
like you're talking like 60s, 1964.
1963 is how
Oh,
far back you'd have to go for the Bears to have
God, I hate this trivia question,
the
Tom.
same number of playoff victories as a franchise as Mike McCarthy has as a head coach. And granted, there's a little bit of the slant because there haven't been as many playoff games. But to be said, there's been a lot more years. Do you know how much further back you'd have to go for the Bears to exceed Mike McCarthy's 11 career playoff wins? So we're at 1963 to match. How far to get to that 12th win?
1947.
46.
Oh, it's just embarrassing, Tom. I don't like this trivia question. You're
I'm
making
sorry, but
my heart hurt, Tom.
I heard it. I heard it on the radio. Mike Mulligan, I believe, is the former Bears beat reporter for the Chicago Tribune, now hosts or has long since been hosting the morning show on 670 The Score. That is a statistic or a factoid that he put out there. It's just like that's going to come in quite handy for the show we do, even if it does
Uh,
hurt.
I'll tell you this about Mike McCarthy, just to keep it brief.
Sure.
I think he's gotten a little bit of a bad rep. I mean, he's a guy that in Dallas won double-digit regular season wins when Dak Prescott was healthy, when their team was healthy. He's not a great football coach, but he's a pretty good football coach. The Bears could do better. They could also do far worse. He's in the
Hmm.
better half of candidates for this job. I would not choose him as the coach of the Bears, but I think they can do worse. I think they can do
They could
worse
make a
for
representative
sure.
argument for him, yes.
He's good enough to be an NFL head coach. He is probably right about like in that 15 to 20 range for me as far as the
Hmm.
best coaches in the league. Maybe a little bit lower with the promising coordinators, but
Hmm.
he's a guy that he's an NFL coach who have no trouble finding a job. He'll be coaching somebody if he
Oh yeah,
wants to next season.
indeed. What do you have for
My
trivia?
trivia question is, playoff quarterbacks. This should be a lot of these should be fairly easy, but I always get curious around playoff season which quarterback has won the most games. So, can
Hmm.
you name the top 10 winningest quarterbacks by playoff wins NFL history? Number 1 obviously kind of easy.
Tom Brady.
Tom Brady number 1 with 35 playoff wins.
Let's see. I know that he passed. Was it Joe Montana? Was like the last milestone for him.
Mhm.
So there's Joe Montana.
He's number 2 with 16 playoff wins.
Patrick Mahomes is tied with Montana, correct?
Patrick Mahomes has 1 playoff win back of Montana.
Behind. Okay,
So
so
he's got
that's
15,
three.
so Mahomes should pass him this season. By the way, Mahomes has touched on the pick ratio in the playoffs 41 to 8, 45-21 Montana,
Hmm.
88-40 Brady. I'm
Yeah,
actually looking at some
essentially.
of the quarterbacks in the top 10 in this list. Some of
Hmm.
these guys barely have a better touchdown to pick ratio, Tom.
Well, I mean that's also because interceptions have the perception of interceptions has changed throughout NFL history. It wasn't quite as big a deal because Brett Favre, my next guess, he was a guy that threw a lot of touchdowns, also threw a lot of interceptions. Not on the list.
No, he is on the list. I'm
Good.
sorry. Brett Favre
Oh,
is
okay.
tied for ninth.
Ah, okay. I was gonna say if he's not on the list, good.
No, tied
'Cause
for eighth,
I don't wish
excuse me. Tied for eighth.
anything good for
Three
Brett Favre.
guys that each have 13 playoff wins that are tied
Mm.
for eighth.
Let's see. So guys have been around for a while. Oh, I don't know if Philip Rivers and the Chargers won enough though. So
No,
he's not on the list.
he's not on the list.
Drew Brees with the Saints.
Drew Brees not on the list.
No.
Not the top 10 at least.
Peyton Manning. He was around
Peyton
long
Manning
enough,
is
right?
number 4. 14 playoff wins. Tied for fourth, actually, with another quarterback.
Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers just outside the top 10,
Good.
Tom.
Good.
11th, only had 12 playoff wins in his career.
Couldn't happen to a worse guy.
Right. Right.
Um, Playoff wins.
There's probably
Hmm.
these are
There
actually
were,
probably all pretty common sense. I
yeah,
think you
like
should get all of these. So
Russell
I don't want to
Wilson.
give you clues.
I think Russell Wilson's on the list because he's had a couple of Super Bowl runs.
Russell Wilson not on the list.
Really?
He's
Oh, I
only
would
got
have figured.
9 playoff wins,
Mm,
Tom. Wilson and Breeze, by the way, tied for 16th, which is crazy. Let
mm,
this sink in.
mm.
16th most playoff wins by a quarterback is 9. That
Wow.
is what's making what Brady did and what Mahomes is doing now just seems just so impressive.
Hmm. Let's see. Troy Aikman got a couple Super Bowls in
Troy
there.
Aikman is actually, Tom, you might be shocked to learn Troy Aikman not in the top 10. He is 13th, 11 playoff
Wow.
wins. Outside of those Super Bowl runs, he was not winning
Well,
playoff games.
he only played
23
about 12
touchdowns,
years.
17 picks for Mr. Aikman in the playoffs.
How about, let's see. Okay, maybe not enough playoff games to go this far back, but what about like a Bart Starr, for example? An
Not Bart
oldie but
Starr. In
goodie.
his era, they played less games, I think, Tom.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's like I
And
know that they won a lot, but maybe not as
well,
many
so this is Super
opportunities.
Bowl era. So Bart Starr
Okay,
played in the NFL championship as
gotcha,
well. So if
gotcha.
you count those, he might be on this list. But he's only got
Oh, but
8
the cutoff.
NFL playoff
Oh, makes
wins.
sense.
Actually, I don't know if that
Um,
counts that era or not. But either way, it lists him with 8 playoff wins.
let's see. Why am I? So it's got to be like a bunch of modern guys. Like I'm just gonna like start rattling them off. So
Hmm.
Matthew Stafford,
No,
no, because of all those Lions years.
technically, Tom,
Josh Allen.
not a single guy is active in the that's left.
Oh,
The only active guy in the top 10 is Patrick Mahomes.
oh, okay. Eli Manning, couple of
Not
playoff
Eli.
ones there. No, Kurt Warner,
No Kurt Warner.
McNair,
No McNair.
McNabb,
No. So I'll give you a
Steve
clue.
Young.
All these guys have won a Super Bowl. Steve Young has won. He's tied with
Okay, so
Peyton Manning
Stevens
with
won.
14 playoff wins.
John Elway.
John Elway also tied with 14. By the way, Elway, Tom, a
Hmm.
little bit underwhelming playoff numbers by stats.
Hmm.
27 touchdowns, 21 picks, only 54.5 completion rate in the playoffs, John Elway.
All you got to do is hand it off to Hall of Famer Terrell Davis,
That's how he won
who
a
was
Super Bowl, Terrell
also
Davis.
who's also your mentor, and I believe it was Madden '05. He was like your mentor if you did the create a player or whatever the
Was he?
superstar mode
I
was.
love
Yeah.
that. There's one that's really obvious that you're missing.
Ben
I would argue
Roethlisberger.
two. So actually, you're missing 3 guys only.
Okay.
Brady first, Montana second, Mahomes third, Manning, Steve Young, John Elway tied for fourth. And then we have another guy tied with them.
Hmm.
So you're missing the guys that are technically in 7th and 8th, and the guy that's
So
in 10th.
Ben Roethlisberger.
Ben Roethlisberger is tied for 8th/10th.
I
So
already
that
said
one's an
Eli
obvious
Manning,
one. And then
right?
you should know this next one. I'm actually surprised you don't have this one.
Matt Ryan.
Not Matt Ryan. Think about Ben Roethlisberger for a second.
Terry Bradshaw didn't play enough games, did he?
He did. He won 4
Oh,
Super Bowls, Tom. He's
well, but I
got
don't
he's
know how many playoff games that they had
well, he
back
won
then. If it was
4
well.
Super Bowls, 14 playoff wins for
Okay,
Bradshaw. And then you're
so I'm
missing
missing
a
one.
2-time Super Bowl champion who is up there in the top 10 for playoff wins.
Two-time Super Bowl champion.
You would not have watched him play.
So I'm thinking maybe that's like a Joe Theismann, Ken Stabler, Phil
Not my boys.
Sims.
You're probably the era right before those guys.
Before, so in the '70s,
Mm-hmm.
Bob Greasy. We're going all
Not
the way
Bob
back to the
Greasy.
Dolphins.
I think this guy played in the 70s
Hmm.
and 80s, but I think he was winning his championships in the 70s. Let me confirm. But I think he's a 70s quarterback.
Well, it wouldn't be Johnny Unitas or Fran Tarkenton. Like that seems a little too far back.
Now, the Vikings never win enough to get Frank
No,
Tarkenton on that list. Yeah, I'm looking at it
I
on my phone. I think he played in the 70s, Tom.
hmm.
He's a legend. He played from 1969 to 1979. So, yes, the 70s.
I don't know why I'm having such a difficult time with this one. Clearly, I need to brush up on my Sporkle. AFC or
Who else
NFC?
was good in the 70s? Say that again.
AFC or NFC team?
NFC.
In the NFC, Roger Staubach for the
Yep.
Cowboys. Okay, yeah,
Roger the Dodger,
he
Captain
doesn't spring to
America.
mind. Hmm.
So there's your top 10.
If anything, I'd remember Ted Lilly more because I had a book that had like all like the
You
top
mean Bob
defensive
Lilly?
players. Was it Bob Lilly, not Ted Lilly? Oh,
Yeah,
whatever.
Ted Lilly's the baseball pitcher, Tom.
That's it. Okay, that's why the misnomer.
You're thinking of Bob Lilly was not a quarterback though. He played the line.
Yeah, he was
So
defensive line. Yeah, a great
yeah,
story about how he like lost a bunch of weight because he road tripped for 3 days, eat nothing but sandwiches, and the Cowboys were like, "Oh my god, what did we do?" And then they just fed him steak, and they were like, "Oh wait, we know what we're doing."
right.
Statements of the week. So, kind of, this is one where I was kind of going back and forth, thinking about what I wanted my statement of the week to be, and then you gave me a gift
Mm.
in this show. You offered me an opportunity to stand on the soapbox and say that the regular season matters. Winning your division matters. There should be a benefit for teams that win their division in the regular season. I might be mistaken on this one. I haven't
Are we
visited.
talking college or NFL?
I'm talking NFL. I have not visited every NFL stadium, but I'm fairly certain there aren't many, if any, banners for teams that make it to the wild card. What there are banners for teams that have won their division. It's something that I think still matters. And I think more than that, it matters to the pocketbooks for owners. I don't think this is ever going to change because no owner wants to give up a 1 in 4 chance at having an extra playoff games revenue in their pockets. We're going to make this a meritocracy for the money? Ah, nay, 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 I say. This is something that outside of the cynical side of things, I actually do believe pretty heavily that regardless of what your team record is on the season, winning the division, getting that automatic berth should come with the advantage of being a home playoff team. Another team has a better record than you but played in a tougher division. Well, maybe they should have done better in said division. That's
I
my
don't like
opinion.
that.
The Minnesota Vikings could have been at home if they took care of matters in their division. They only won 4 out of the 6 divisional games. If they had won one more, then they would have had that bye. They would have had that home field advantage throughout the playoffs. But instead, the Lions were the ones that went ahead and earned that. That's what I think it should be. I like how the system is now. I think this is how it should be going forward. I also think, again, cynically, it is how it's going to be because, again, cash money rules everything. But I think that there should be a benefit. There should be a reward to winning your division every single year for an NFL team.
So those teams that I think it was what was it Carolina a while back that was like 7-9 and they hosted a team that was like
The
ten and
Seattle Seahawks,
six.
yes,
That's
yes,
fair. That's
yes,
not fair.
they won their division. Yes.
That's not fair, Tom. I'm sorry. I could not disagree more. It's all about who the best team is. What's your best record that you have? If you have a better record, you should host a playoff game. Maybe if you want to have fun with it, if they have the exact same record, maybe instead of going to the tiebreakers, go to head to head first. But if it's head to head is tied,
Hmm.
the next tiebreaker could be that you win your division instead of what was your strength of schedule or whatever. But as far
Hmm.
as if you have a better record than someone, you should host a playoff game. Simply put, it's only fair. You're making it unfair against those teams that did play hard in the regular season. Those teams that did win in the regular season. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because we're not going to get each other to agree. But
No,
Tom,
no.
I couldn't disagree more. The top teams get the top seeds, plain and simple. That's the way it should be.
I think that the teams that achieve their objectives in the regular season should have the benefit and reap that reward.
I've got a very, very, very controversial statement of the week.
Ooh.
But it goes in line with me, Tom,
Hmm.
because you know me, I love to anoint people early on in their career. I love to
Oh boy.
spot these guys
Okay.
early on in their career. Mahomes is a guy I spotted right off the bat his first season he played. You know me, Russell Wilson, Cam Newton, before they even played a down in the NFL. Sometimes you see a player play and you just know. Very controversial statement incoming. The fifth best quarterback in the NFL right now, Tom Castleman, is Jaden Daniels. Everyone's talking about the top four: Mahomes, Lamar, Burrow, and of course, Josh Allen. Those are the top four. Is Jaden Daniels way ahead of some of these other guys? No. Matthew Stafford, Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert, CJ Stroud, Jared Goff. That's your second tier. But you know how lists are done, Tom. They're done top five,
Hmm.
they're done top 10. If I
Sure.
had to pick one guy right now that is the fifth best quarterback in the National Football League. It's a rookie. It's Jaden Daniels, baby. Number 4 in the NFL in QBR. QBR is my favorite stat when it comes to quarterbacks. It takes into factor passing and running. How good are you both combined? Takes a factor interceptions, passing yards, rushing yards, even like the clutch play. It is my favorite stat to look at a quarterback and how good did they play that season. He's number 4 in the league in QBR. His receivers, Terry McLaurin, pretty good receiver. He gets Jaden Daniels, second in the NFL in receiving touchdowns. Terry McLaurin was not doing this without Jaden Daniels. His number 2 receiver, number 3 receiver, number 4 receiver, nothing special. For a number 1 receiver, Terry McLaurin he's what, about the 10th or 15th best receiver in the league, Tom? Give or take.
Receiver, yeah.
He doesn't have a top 5 receiver at number 1. His number 2 receiver, just okay. Number 3, just okay. Offensive line, 2 years ago, these guys allowed top 5 most sacks ever. They're just okay. His running backs are just okay. His teammates are just okay. This is a rookie quarterback lifting up his teammates, making his team a top 10 offense in the NFL based on his talents, his running ability, his poise, his passing ability, his decision making. If this guy gets pressured, takes one step forward, avoids the pressure, 5-yard pass. One step forward, 7-yard run. The plays that Caleb Williams is taking as sacks, the plays that Sam Darnold is taking as sacks, the plays that 70-80% of quarterbacks take as sacks, this guy's turning into 5-yard gains, 6-yard gains, 8-yard gains. Fourth quarter, Tom, 12 passing touchdowns in the fourth quarter. Broke the NFL record. He's clutch. He's used to the SEC atmospheres. The playoffs don't phase this guy. Playoff road game, first ever playoff road game. He starts. His team didn't punt the ball all game long. I love this kid. If I had to pick 5 quarterbacks right now for next season, for one season, forget the future. He's young. He'd easily be a top 5 pick if we're going based on the future. If I was picking 5 quarterbacks for next season, Tom, he is the number 5 guy. I'm taking Jaden Daniels.
I mean, I don't think that's entirely unreasonable of a take. I mean,
who's the fifth best quarterback, by the way? I mean, one guy.
We categorize it differently.
Who's the 5th best quarterback for in the NFL?
He is a very good win because of quarterback. Because I don't really like doing the whole ranking 1, 2, 3 because I don't think that the hierarchy necessarily works that way. I think that he's in a very, very good situation.
Allen, Burrow, Jackson, Jaden Daniels, top 5.
Yeah, he's right. He's in that conversation. He's right up there. I'd add to that bubble, like you said. Jalen Hurts is a win because of. I would say that probably I'm like looking at QBR right now. I would say, the list of win because of. I used to think C.J. Stroud. I think you probably could still put C.J. Stroud, although I think he's a tier below if we're going to go for like win because of, and then like
I like C.J. Stroud personally,
like almost automatic win type of thing. He's right up there. He's proven it with his play all season long, and this is the benefit of what good coaching can get you. Like I know that the comparison is always going to be Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams because they were 1-2 in the same drafted teams that had. Historically, a ton of dysfunction, but then you compare what they had to go throughout the season, where you have a stable head coach in Dan Quinn, a good offensive coordinator in Cliff Kingsbury, and an investment in a team around Jaden Daniels and an offensive plan that accentuates his strengths. And you look at what happened with Chicago, the support system was not nearly as strong as we Bears fans had thought for Chicago, as we both had picked the Bears to be wild card team. So I think that Daniels, with his play and with his situation, I think we both said like the Bears is like the last wild card team on our show to start the season. I'm
Okay.
fairly certain we were both in on that one.
Okay. Rats.
We both had that orange and blue Kool-Aid, no doubt about it. But I don't actually think that's that controversial of a statement that you have that Jaden Daniels is in this top tier of quarterbacks because it's proven. He's earned it so far with his play. Now we're doing the whole like project into the future. There's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of story to still be written. As we've seen, there are plenty of quarterbacks that have really good seasons and then falter, and then make that adjustment in maybe year 3 and 4. You know, some quarterbacks are able to hit the ground running and are just always good. I mean, there's so many different stories. I mean, look at say Josh Allen. The first couple of years, there were people really questioning if he was going to be a franchise quarterback. Look where he is now. Look at the journey Lamar Jackson has taken. There's no one right path to determining who's going to be an all-time great quarterback. Jaden Daniels certainly is well on his way, and he's earned it so far.
I think it's like watching the game, like the poise that he
Hmm.
shows, the decision making, the way to step up in the pocket. Because a lot of folks want to group him with, RG3 because he's a running quarterback for Washington. The guy's a very very capable passer, a
Hmm.
very very strong passer. You want to group him with C.J. Stroud as a rookie? I think looking at his pocket presence and what he does in the pocket against blitzes, he's more advanced than CJ Stroud at this stage in his career. So
Mm.
I definitely agree. Big Jaden Daniels fan, big fan for him. Couple things that we learned, Tom. How do you get in the final eight in the playoffs? You go for fourth down and you succeed, and you have a quarterback that's top 8 in the NFL in QBR. That's the key to success, apparently. Uh,
Those are some pretty strong correlational. I don't know how much of that is causational,
Maybe a little bit.
but there's, I mean, well, or not necessarily causational, but how much is tail wagging the dog? Because if you're a good football team, you're inherently going to be more likely to succeed the more opportunities that you go for a first down. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think
there's
Jaden Daniels though was hard though because I look at him and you saw this actually on that last drive against the Bucks. Collinsworth was talking about it.
mm,
Washington, not Washington, Tampa, excuse me, had a couple linebackers up close on a fourth and or 3rd and 7 or whatever the situation was because they're afraid of him running the ball. What did it do? It opened up the middle of the field. What did Jaden Daniels do? He found a receiver open in the middle of the field.
mhm.
And maybe that's why he's so hard on fourth down, though, because when you have a quarterback that can run
That's
and
multiple,
throw,
yeah.
that makes it tough on a defense, Tom.
Hmm.
That makes it very tough on a defense. So
Absolutely, yeah.
anyway, great show today. Hoping for another show next week. We'll recap
Hmm.
our divisional round. Then we'll have a more thorough breakdown of the conference championship games. Just real quick, I'm still picking what I had before our playoffs started. I'm
Same.
picking the Chiefs and Bills. And then we have the Eagles and Lions. Then I still have the Chiefs over the Lions in the Super Bowl. I believe you've got the Chiefs and Ravens. And then you
Hmm.
have the Eagles and Lions. And I think you have Eagles Ravens,
Oh,
right,
yeah,
Tom?
Eagles over Ravens for the Super Bowl. That's correct.
Okay, Eagles over
We'll
Ravens for
see.
Tom, Chiefs over Lions for me. Very, very different. Betting locks of the week, we've been going very similar recent weeks. We're against each other. So should be a very, very interesting week. I believe
Hmm.
one game exactly against each other. One game sorta. Technically, Houston can cover the first half spread, and the Chiefs cover
Sure.
the game spread, although probably unlikely, but possible.
We'll see.
It's not going to be a 6-0 week, though. That's for sure,
No, that's
Tom. With us going
could be
Oppo on
could
the
be a
Ravens
5-0 and
Bills.
1. Could be 5-0 and 1. It could be a
5-0-1
one
is
point win for
possible.
the Ravens. I'd take that.
I'm good with the 5-0-1. Anyway, Tom, thank you so much for co-hosting with me. Had a great show. Thank you so much to all the listeners, the viewers. You guys are awesome. Appreciate you guys taking the time out of your days to listen to our show. We'll be back next week. NFL playoffs. It's going to be so much fun. College football championship recap. All that and more next week on Salute Your Sports. Have a good one, Tom.
You too.